of thinking about this initiative. So I really encourage you all to speak up and offer your suggestions as ideas as you'd like. So I'd like to start by introducing my wonderful team at Madison, Wisconsin. Our team science core is really dedicated to closing what you could call the research to practice gap in team science. This team includes my fabulous collaborator, Dr. Whitney Sweeney, who's a scientist in our core and who leads our educational initiatives, as well as the PI of our CTSA grant, Dr. Alan Brazier, who is a passionate leader of translational science and team science. Dr. Brazier is also the current president of ACTS, the Association for Clinical and Translational Sciences, which again is the organization through which we plan to offer this digital badge. And again, I'm Patrick Kelly, the former historian, now team science research and program manager at our CTSA, the Institute for Clinical and Translational Research at UW-Madison. So I start with our team because we epitomize the different career trajectories of what we're calling team science professionals. Again, educators, scholars, and practitioners of team science. And to give you an idea of what we do as team science professionals, I put here our mission of our team science core at ICTR, which is to facilitate high impact team science by developing infrastructure to support interdisciplinary teams. And we advance this mission through what we call our 4 pillars that are listed here. So we first design, deliver, and evaluate educational workshops on team science for a variety of audiences, interdisciplinary audiences, graduate students, postdoctoral trainees, faculty, and staff. We also design, deliver, and
Alguém
evaluate.
comeu ontem? Sobrou comida pra eles? Achei que eu tava fazendo muito, cara, que todo mundo repetiu.
Somebody could mute themselves,
Eu tava
please.
quase tosse do Paulo.
We also design, deliver, and evaluate evidence-based interventions in team science, such as collaboration planning, which is an intervention designed to help teams strategically launch their projects by developing collaborative team processes from the beginning. In addition, we conduct scholarship in team science, so we rigorously evaluate our collaboration planning sessions, and both Whitney and I lead our own studies in team science. So I'm working on a study about how the leaders of translational teams can develop trust and trusting relationships. And Whitney's been working on a project that explores how CTSAs support their translational teams in terms of project management, programs, and resources. And then we seek to foster a culture of team science, both at UW and across the broader consortium of the CTSA awards. So my colleague Whitney recently formed a new cross-CTSA working group that's exploring the intersection of team science and community-engaged research. And of course, this effort we're talking about today, the First National Digital Badge in Team Science, is an example, again, of how we're working to shape the broader culture of team science. So now I'd like to transition to tell you a bit about the genesis of our digital badge initiative. This initiative grew out of discussions our team was having last fall with members of that TSAG group, the Team Science Affinity Work Group that's led by Dr. Kevin Wooten. And our discussions revolved around this problem as we've defined it here. Team science professionals currently lack a clearly defined training and career pathway. So remember lonely and lost Patrick with his 50 PDFs in a box folder. We're really concerned with how do we help him find his team science feet. In response, our team formed a new special interest group in late March of this year at ACTS, devoted to team science professionals and really devoted to helping to define that pathway, both through sharing and disseminating the latest team science scholarship and interventions, and doing so in partnership with organizations like InterReach and the International Network for the Science of Team Science. And really, this digital badge initiative is our first signature idea for how we're hoping to define that career pathway. Again, our idea is that maybe Patrick, from a few years back, would be able to find his team science feet a bit faster if he had a set of digital badges to help guide his training. So why did we decide on digital badges? And we really selected digital badges as a promising pathway forward for a number of reasons. Digital badges are appealing because they are a validated electronic and shareable indicator that signals one has achieved a set of skills or competencies in a given set of domains, such as team science. Digital badges can be easily appended to one's CV or added to one's LinkedIn profile or placed on email signatures. Then, by clicking on the badge, one is kind of connected to the valuable metadata that then certifies that set of competencies. And from the literature, we know that digital badges document skill progression from foundational to more advanced knowledge, and then they can play a really important role in terms of galvanizing people's careers. We very much live in a fast, ever-evolving world of work, and digital badges, I think, can offer the flexibility of what Susan Pusak at UNC calls the personalized training pathways that really upskill the unique and vital roles in the clinical and translational science workforce. So roles like clinical research professionals, project managers, team scientists, many, many other unique and vital roles. We were also aware of what you might call a digital badge cultural buzz. Many different institutions at both local, national, and international levels across an array of disciplines are now talking about digital badges as promising training pathways. And then in our field, we see this already at NCATS, which has issued digital badges, as well as the Foundation for Advanced Education and the Sciences at NIH. More locally, several CTSA institutions have created and implemented their own digital badge programs to create and sustain their workforce development programs. And I'm sure a number of you on this webinar know of other digital badge initiatives at your local universities. So given the confluence of these different initiatives, we became really excited about the tremendous opportunity to study the implementation and impact of digital badges, and really seeing them as a tool that can enhance CTS training, not only for team science professionals, but also more broadly. We're working with the Clinical Research Professionals Task Force SIG at ACTS, as well as the Professional Development Committee at ACTS. So we're very much approaching this digital badge initiative with our researcher hats on, and we think there are a lot of open empirical questions about digital badges. So for example, we're curious if this digital badge initiative will cement or solidify the identity of team science professionals. We know that identification is at the heart of building community and people persisting in their roles in any field. So our hope would be that badges help foster the identity of team science professionals, potentially even in a particularly marked way for those identities that are historically under-recognized in STEM fields in the biomedical sciences. Relatedly, if people identify more as team science professionals, we're curious to see if we see an increase in the numbers of team science professionals and the persistence of professionals in their roles. We also wonder if badges will be accepted by employers, and if so, will they improve the short and long-term career outcomes of those who get credentialed? And finally, in our ideal world of maximal effectiveness, we would hope that our digital badges also lead to the increased performance of translational teams, perhaps even, again, ideally catalyzing the process of translational science itself. So I'd like to return to these research questions a bit at the end, and I'd love to just hear from people in the community and explore some questions related to metrics and how we might assess these questions. So how long have I been talking here? About 15 minutes. Maybe I'll pause here with a fair amount of setup, and just before I dig into the specifics of the digital badges, I just wanted to ask if anyone had any questions or wanted to interject with any thoughts or ideas.
I'm Ellie Dickman.
Hi there.
Hi, and I do have one question, and that is, will you be explaining what the digital badge encompasses in terms of being able to demonstrate competence in terms of skills? I'm familiar with programs, for instance, out of Cambridge, the CELTA, which is a certification for teaching adults that is highly respected around the world. And in order to receive the certification, you must go through training that involves actual demonstration, of the skills, etc. So I'm wondering if you'll talk to that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question, Ellie. We have some ideas, and we definitely, every training that we want to include is linked to a competency framework that has an assessment, and that's important to us. And I'll talk through more some ideas for how we're thinking of approaching that. That's definitely the next few slides. I hate to say that, but it is true. Any other questions at this point about a lot of the information I just threw out there? All right. I'm going to keep going then and hopefully answer some of Ellie's question or at least address it. All right, so now let me tell you a little bit about the nuts and bolts of how we're thinking about this, of these digital badges. So over the past few months, we've been developing different levels of team science professionals badges. We currently have 4 different levels. I'll show you those in a few slides, but I kind of want to slowly build it up to explain the different components. Each level contains training modules, and each of those modules has assessments that are linked to existing competency frameworks in team science. So we plan to include and vet all nationally available trainings with competency assessments for each level, as well as include alternative options for credentialing, such as, you know, a portfolio or kind of a practicum submission. We know we have a large group of accomplished scholars and educators in team science, and we also really want to provide them with a clear and easy way to get credentialed, perhaps even kind of a grandfathering people in, so we have an army of mentors. And I'd love to hear if people have thoughts about how we could approach that. That would be great. We've really been learning from Dr. Wayne McCormick at the University of Florida on this, and he's working on a similar credential. He's been a part of a similar credentialing effort as part of the team-based learning collaborative, and that team-based learning collaborative has 3 different levels of badges that has been somewhat of a helpful model that we can bounce ideas off of. So before digging into the badge levels, I want to provide an overview of the different kinds of trainings and interventions we have in mind for our digital badge, with a caveat and a note of caution that we have yet to even talk to the PIs and content owners of these modules. We don't know if they're interested and even are able to participate, so this is a bit speculative, but our hope would be that they would be interested because it would be a way to, you know, get more people to take their training programs and help build our collaborative network of team science professionals. So for this first level of badges that I'll show you in a bit, it's really just about fundamentals. So we envision someone maybe taking a few modules from Coalesce's excellent teamscience.net. If you're not aware, that's a great program out of Northwestern. They're one of our national leaders in team science, and they've developed these great interactive training modules and a new team science community toolkit that's especially great, that I encourage people to check out. For more advanced levels, we anticipate someone learning more specific team science skills in a program like Team Maps out of UTMB. Dr. Kevin Wooten, his 5-part behavioral skills training program and their entire team, really great training program. And then for the more advanced level of intervention expert, we anticipate someone learning specific interventions like perhaps collaboration planning or research jams out of Michigan, Dr. Beth LaPense, or the Toolbox Dialogue Initiative out of Michigan State. I think I saw Dr. Marissa Rinkus on this call. This is just a reminder that this is all speculative. My goal here is just to give you an idea of prominent trainings that have already been disseminated, but beyond one local institution. Ideally, PIs would be interested in collaborating, and we'd work closely with these content owners in order to develop our digital badge initiative. So now the long-awaited reveal of what are we talking about with the different badges. Because this table is somewhat overwhelming, I wanted to kind of give you different components of the table first so you weren't so super overwhelmed. But this is our current draft of our 4 different certification levels, each with unique competencies, trainings, and audiences. So with this first level of team science fundamentals, we're targeting individuals learning team science and the science of team science, perhaps through the great resources on teamscience.net. With the second level of team science practitioner, we're targeting individuals who are applying what they've learned from that first level, perhaps through submitting a portfolio of materials that is then reviewed by a mentor. With the third level of translational team trainer, we're targeting the trainers of individuals on translational teams, perhaps trained through team maps or by submitting a portfolio with syllabi of courses taught, and then that portfolio is reviewed by a mentor. And then with the fourth level of translational team intervention expert, we're targeting the trainers of entire translational teams themselves by training them in the latest evidence-based interventions like research jams and collaboration planning. So these levels aren't perfect and nothing is set in stone, but I wanted to give you an idea of what we're talking about when we discuss our 4 different digital badge levels. So with that, I think I'll pause and maybe check to see if there are any questions or comments, and feel free just to unmute yourself and jump in because it's hard for me to see hands when I'm sharing slides. Ellie, does
Hi,
that
my name's
sound... Hey,
actually,
Tanya.
I do have a question. Hi, I had a question around the how to apply. What is the sort of application process? Maybe you'll get into that in more detail, but I'm curious to find out more there.
It's a great question, Tanya. We don't have it fully figured out because we don't even have a website, but I imagine the process to apply would be something like you would go to the ACTS website, you would click on a button, and that would take you to our digital badge platform, which we have yet to figure out what that is, maybe Credly, right? And then you would start kind of going through it there, but we don't even have that figured out yet. We're still working out that the details of how one would apply and one would be certified.
Okay, and I guess a follow-up question is that what would be the timeline for rolling that out? When will you have these sorts of ideas or implementations ready for us to jump into?
Yeah, no, that's a great question too. And Christine, as she mentioned, she's leading this project management group where we're talking about timeline. And I think we met a few days ago and we have an idea of a kind of a phased rollout. So maybe the first 2 certification levels, we want to target to roll that out this fall, test those out, see how it goes. They're a little less onerous, a little less time intensive. We can see how it works with the mentor. And then maybe roll out the next levels 3 and 4 another 6 months later. That's kind of the time frame we've been talking about right now, but we're hesitant to be too exact or to promise too much because we're still kind of working out a lot of the details. We've only been developing this since really March.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I'm excited to see more.
Yeah, thanks for your questions. I just wanted to ask Ellie if that somewhat answered some of your questions from earlier. I'm happy to revisit those questions.
It does in terms of what needs to be provided in for demonstrating or showing proficiency, either passing, taking, participating, providing. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, Rebecca. I think I see your hand raised.
Yeah, hi Patrick. It's so good to see you. And
Likewise, thanks for attending.
yeah, glad to be here. Could you explain a bit about how I know you're at the very early stages, but the process for identifying a pool of mentors, and what that might look like in the mentor-mentee matching process.
Such a great point. Yeah.
How do you identify them? And then any thoughts on how you'll be assigning them once you have them in your group?
I wish I had better answers for you, Rebecca. They're such great questions. I know that we have kind of an army of experienced team science professionals who we're hoping to entice to be mentors, right? Since we're just kind of like, this is probably the first promotional event we've had on the Digital Badge Initiative where I'm kind of marketing it and talking about it externally. Our goal, I guess, would be to keep doing that, to get people excited about it, to develop that kind of army of mentors. We have yet to figure out how do we, I call it kind of the grandfather process, right? Because we don't want this army of mentors. They might not want to kind of go through the same process of certification. So figuring out how do we create first that army of mentors, and then as you're saying, match them up with related research interests would be ideal. It's also really tough, and this is part of a related set of questions that Christina and I kind of wanted to explore with you all at the end, but it's also hard when we kind of want to build the best model, but also recognizing that every mentor in this thing will be volunteering their time. So even like the ideal model might not be what's practical given our army of volunteer mentors too. So I can't answer the specifics of your question as much as I appreciate it, because I know that's kind of what we need to develop, but the question itself helps me just reflect on part of our challenge and struggle in this type of collaborative work when we don't have a lot of money to support it.
Yeah, I completely understand. I look forward to the discussion later, but one quick idea is, using trainees once you get the cohorts to go through the training to make a commitment to be a mentor in the future.
I love that idea. Yeah, kind of pay it back, right?
Pay it back.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I want to check the chat here. Okay, great. So I'm going to keep talking, tell you guys a little bit more about how we're developing this. We've created 4 discrete working groups to move this project along, which has, again, been really impressive to me because everyone, as I was just saying, is like volunteering their time. So I find that really inspirational, and it's honestly some of the favorite, like the most enjoyable parts of my work is collaborating with people from different hubs throughout the nation. In part because we kind of get to walk the walk and talk the talk of how you build collaborative, supportive team science partnerships. It would be a little bit easier if we had a little bit more money to do this, but I think it's great. So anyways, about these working groups, I'm leading the first one, which again is charged with the details of these great questions you're asking me that I don't have the specifics on, but what are the different badge levels? What's the exact process to apply and certify? How do we vet those national training programs? What's this army of mentors look like? What does a portfolio submission look like? Christine, wonderful, great Christine Glauber is leading the second group, which is really the project management and development process, thinking about, what are the key project milestones and what's our dissemination strategy and communication strategy, and what platform are we going to partner with, and how do we work with other SIGs to convince ACTS that this is the right pathway forward. This third national survey group is headed by Heather Billings from the Mayo Clinic, and is really going to develop a comprehensive national survey. We know that there are a lot of training programs out there or we imagine there are other training programs out there that we don't know about, right? So we would love to get a more complete sense of what's out there to fold additional programs into future iterations of the digital badge. But we're also interested in assessing in this survey how team science cores have shifted, or just what's their composition these days. We know that we live under kind of multiple FOAs, and different hubs have changed how they focus on team science, and we're interested in kind of more fully capturing the landscape of team science cores across the nation. And then Liz Lyons from UTMB is heading this great gamification group, which is thinking about doing some literature reviews in the science of gamification to make badges more engaging, appealing, and comprehensible. These are open to anyone. I mean, it would be great if you wanted to join our SIG, but if you want to help, feel free to email me. We would love, again, recognizing everyone's volunteering their time, we would love to fold you into our volunteer army. What time is it now? 11:30. So I think it'd be great if we could talk through one scenario, because it speaks to a few of the questions that were brought up, and I would love to just pick the collective minds of this community about a few questions. So with apologies for all of this text, I'd love if we could explore this scenario for the second level of digital badges focused on the team science practitioner. So last fall, Maha, the PI of an interdisciplinary translational team at UW-Madison, was interested in learning about how she could apply the science of team science to more effectively lead her lab. So she applied for and was then certified with the Team Science Fundamentals badge after completing 2 modules on teamscience.net and submitting her materials to the ACTS Team Science Professionals Digital Badge Committee. She now wants to apply for that second level of badge, the Team Science Practitioner badge, in which she will need to demonstrate how she applies the principles of team science she learned in taking that Team Science Fundamentals course. So to apply, she'll assemble a portfolio of materials that demonstrates her application of team science principles, which she'll review first with her assigned mentor. And then after her mentor signs off on her portfolio, she will apply for the practitioner badge, which will then be reviewed by an oversight committee from our team science professional SIG before being issued her badge. This last line, I think, speaks to Rebecca's point, right? So we want to build this kind of circular, supportive, collaborative community. So then Maha ideally joins the SIG and then also serves as a mentor for other team science practitioners. So I'm interested, number one, in just the InterReach's community. What do you think about this scenario? Does this seem like supportive and helpful? And then two, more concretely, what would that portfolio look like, right? How would Maha demonstrate? I'm struggling a bit thinking about the kind of details of this. How could Maha demonstrate her application of those principles? If people have any thoughts from other models that they've seen or other kind of examples, that would be helpful. I'll stop talking to her to see if anyone has any thoughts. I like that. Liz in the chat says there could be questions or assignments pertaining to the modules to write a reflection on. I like that. Colleen said points for continued professional development and attending conferences. That's great.
Patrick.
Yeah,
It's
hi.
Ellie again. One of the things I'm thinking is some type of rubric regarding demonstration. Let me see here.
I like that. Rubrics.
Demonstrator application. In order for the mentor to sign up, there would need to be some type of a rubric. Just thinking out loud here.
I love that idea, Ellie. Hey, Christine.
Oh, hey, and I realize that you don't want, we should just jump in, but I'm just thinking, like, if Maha is a PI of an interdisciplinary translational team, I could imagine a scenario where it's almost like a 360, like getting the team members to provide some feedback, like some targeted questions about their PI's ability to integrate or integrate perspectives or just some questions around that. So like kind of building on the 360 model.
Yeah, I love that. I would worry if that would disincentivize some people from participating, but I think it's a great model. But Rebecca in the chat says, consider at least two features of skills, behavior and approach to the behavior. I love that. Andrea says, measurements of psychological safety on the team. Tanya says, at least one challenge encountered and how strategies were applied, basically real world success examples. This is great. Thank you, everyone. This is super helpful. So given time, I had another scenario. I don't think I'm going to do that because I have a few other sets of questions I want to explore with people. So again, I wanted to return to evaluating our research questions, thinking about, how we're approaching this as an open empirical question, right? So I was just kind of thinking, so some metrics that I would want to see was, increased numbers of team science professionals, increased numbers of members in our SIG of team science professionals, an increased demand for services, for team science services, I think if we're successful in this digital badge initiative, another metric could be, a broader openness, a kind of, and willingness to engage with the digital badges across what you could call kind of a CTSA badge ecosystem. But I imagine there are a number of other different metrics, and I was curious if people had thoughts on metrics for how we should think about success and what success looks like for our badge initiative. Yes, it's Shefali, please.
Shefali, yeah.
Shefali, hi there.
Hi, sorry, I'm on the phone right now. But actually, before I was hoping you could clarify something for me, because you've mentioned CTSA and you have translational science on your slide over there.
Yeah.
Are we distinguishing, how are we defining translational science, in which teams are obviously an inherent part of it, from situations in which there's team science but not translational science? Or do you just see those two as the same?
So I think we're focused for this digital badge on developing badges for translational teams. I think the broader kind of question of translational science is broader than our particular focus on translational teams. Is that what you're asking?
No, I'm asking whether you are using team synonymously with translational, because I can imagine a scenario in which, so I work in a very translational space, but if you were working in, say, in teams that were not in a translational space, would that be different? I think the challenges are very different in those scenarios. So I guess I'm new to this. I'm new to y'all in general, so I'm just asking for some clarification on any distinction, if there is one, between translational team science and team science in general.
I think it's a great question, and I think depending on who you survey in the field, you'll have people who would lump the two together and say a team is a team is a team, and you'd have other people who want to kind of more narrowly draw those distinctions between, well, a translational team is a particular type of team, and we have to develop resources and interventions for translational teams. I think broadly, I believe that team science applies to a lot of different teams. The specific set of badges we're developing here are focused on our population, which is translational teams, which is a little bit different than just your more generic team. So with a translational team, we're talking about a kind of unique hybrid of an academic knowledge generating team and an industry product development team, right? So
yes,
you're
Thank
right.
You did answer my question.
Okay, awesome. Yep. Trying to catch up with the chat here because I know there's such great thoughts here.
Patrick, because we're recording, we'll get all of the really great chat that's happening, and we can sort of, I think you and I could tag team, kind of seeing if we can fit any of these suggestions into this broader evaluation model.
Yeah, I love that. So maybe I'll go to my last set of questions. So these are a number, we have a number of open questions, but these are the ones that I'm just thinking about right now. So I think we're missing other courses and trainings, and if people have ideas for other potential courses that we should think about including, please let me know. Also, we don't know if these, as I mentioned, the PIs and kind of content owners of the trainings are willing and interested. This question we've talked about before, do we have a volunteer army of mentors? What does that look like in practice? How do we grandfather in existing team science professionals? What does a portfolio submission entail? How should mentors review them? I loved a number of the suggestions in chat. I like the idea of a rubric. I like the idea of kind of demonstrating your application that people suggested. And then also just how long will badges be valid, right? So you get a badge. We know that this field is shifting rapidly. So is that badge valid for 2 years or 3 years? And then do we want to think about some type of recertification process? And I'm curious if people have any ideas. It's a lot of questions. Again, feel free to kind of unmute yourself and jump in on any of these points.
Patrick, this is Ellie again. One of the things that comes to mind, and I talked about this with a colleague who couldn't be online with you and us today, and that is the potential impact, both positive and possibly not as positive, on careers for people who don't get this credential. Will it become something that will be in essence mandatory for some type of career success? So I just want to throw that out because of the conversation I had with my colleague. Possible impact both ways on careers.
Thank you, Ellie.
Patrick, I had a question.
Hey, Marissa.
So when I was first listening to your presentation, I was thinking, oh, there are, lots of people that work in the team science space from different angles. So this is like a badge for them. And then your scenario was about a PI in particular. And so now I'm like, do you see this as being tailored towards PIs that are working with teams to sort of get their training and credentials up? Or do you see this as something that's available for, people that work in research development, research administration, or other aspects of coaching or facilitation that also work with teams and trying to add a credential to their, to their CV?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we've struggled a bit with how we should, again, slice that, draw that distinction. And I think we want to start off at least focusing on our population of translational teams. So it might be for the PI in one scenario, but also for people like me who are kind of the trainers of translational teams, right? And for people like, imagine my scenario where I'm that lost person and all I have is that literature folder of PDFs, a pathway that helps explain, like, these are the trainings that help set the foundation. These are the trainings that help you understand the skills that are important for you to impart to individuals on translational teams. These are the set of evidence-based interventions that we have data for that have shown to improve the performance of translational teams. Starting with translational teams, if we're successful, it could be a model then that we expand, right, beyond to be more encompassing of broad team science, right, not just the particular population that we're focused on, because we're doing this through ACTS and because we're interested in kind of developing proof of purchase that this is something that's even beneficial. Yes. That is all I have. Any other thoughts, questions?
I'll just say that in regards with recruiting mentors, in my limited experience doing that, it seems like the folks who are really engaged, who could be great mentors, are often people who want the mentoring themselves, right? So you have to, like people on this call, for example, there's probably lots of great mentors here, but are probably people who'd excited to get more detailed training themselves. So that, I think, just requires some creative approach to, paying it forward, or groups, or something to sort of have everyone feel like they're benefiting and gaining.
I think that's important. And my other fear is we're going to have 5 super mentors who are tasked with the lion's share of the work because they're the ones who always volunteer their time. So I think that's a concern of mine.
I have another question that is not exactly related to these, but it kind of keeps coming up in my head because I think it's important for me to think about these questions, and that is, what are you thinking about for a fee structure? Most of the trainings I've seen cost something, And that really influences who gets it and how long, till recertification, all that kind of thing.
It's a great question. Initial drafts of the table had fees associated with each level, and we took them away because we didn't want to dissuade people. I think it's important to think about a sliding scale. The model we're learning from, or kind of drawing from, is the team-based learning collaborative with Dr. Wayne McCormick at the University of Florida. And he suggested a fee structure is just important, so it dissuades people who aren't entirely serious about the badge. And it's also a way to, we could do something creative with the funds, right? So it could be a scholarship fund that, say you struggle, you don't have the $100 for the badge. Could we develop some type of team science scholarship fund? I think would be super interesting. Would we want to take the fees and pay the mentors something and reward them for their time? That's another kind of question we could do with the fees. A fee that wouldn't be like too onerous, but also wouldn't be so low that anyone who's like only somewhat serious wants to apply. That's how I'm thinking so far of the fees. I don't know if you have thoughts. Don't think about it that way.
Yeah, I guess my thinking is there's a lot of folks in project manager type roles that don't have access to funding from their employer. So I agree that if it could be like $100 or less, people could do it, and they can do it for their own benefit if they want to.
Yeah. And even something like for the fundamentals level of $25. So it's not even, it's really low, but even 25 is, I'm not going to do that unless I'm serious about it. And we also want to be as kind of arms extended with the team science fundamentals level as possible, because we're hoping to kind of, open tent, bring people in. It's really tough also to look at the chat because there's such great things happening in the chat, but Christine, I think, is gently being like, Patrick, don't look at the chat. But it's also a challenge of facilitating these sessions, right? Because I understand not everyone can unmute themselves and speak, right? So you input your important feedback in the chat, and I want to engage with that as well, but it can be challenging.
There's so much good stuff in there, and we just know that if there's if you're really wanting to get some feedback on something you put in the chat, please feel free to unmute and just share, and just know that if you put it in the chat and you just wanting it to sort of like, I'm putting this out there and I don't want it to be lost, I want you guys to use it, we will get it. It's captured.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I love what Whitney, my colleague at Wisconsin, says. I wonder if there's a way to build in peer-to-peer mentoring. I think that's super sound and probably the only viable way this will work, given everyone's time commitments. Yeah, administrative costs, very important.
And Cinda, I think that's how you say your name, had some really good suggestions for quantitative metrics, including demographics. I'm just thinking like job roles and years of experience, like just thinking that fundamentals could also be written, like if a PI is wanting to make sure that their team is trained in team science, like that could be written into a grant. That team science fundamentals badge could be written into a grant, and could be another way to get a little bit more funding too. So
yeah, that's a great idea. Love that.
Sorry, it took me a minute to come on camera. And on that note, with the being written into the grant, I think that if there was more momentum with federal agencies recognizing that team science professionals play a valuable role in the team, much like how the evaluators truly they look for folks with those credentials, I think that the more we can socialize that with the national funders to make that part of these admin cores or whatever, would help lead credibility to it, and recognizing that these are kind of the standard credentials could be helpful.
I love that idea. I don't see your name, but thank you.
Oh, it's because I'm Nicole Frank from the University of Utah. Sorry.
I would rather say Nicole than U601626.
Yeah. I thought I was logged into Zoom, but sometimes it just takes my user ID.
We've been there. I've been there. Christine, did you have any framing questions you want to end with, or what do you think? I know we're near the hour too, so it's kind of in a weird place.
Yeah. Thank you so much for presenting all of this great work. I mean, there's like a very robust dialogue happening in the chat, so I can totally appreciate your
well, and I really want to thank you all. I want to just confess, I'm like a perfectionist, so it's really hard to present something that's not done, that I don't have answers for, but this was such a good thing for me to have to do just my own professional development, because this is when you want to present, because you precisely get all the feedback you're looking for, and I appreciate that. I just want to kind of open up to it's hard when you don't have all the answers and you want to present something that's perfect, but you don't know that yet. Totally.
Well, I guess my questions were sort of to the InterReach community that's here today. This is, as Patrick mentioned, the Team Science Professionals Digital Badge Initiative is pretty firmly situated within the translational, biomedical, clinical, and translational world. And InterReach, I think, has a really nice part in that. And originally, InterReach was born out of the Science of Team Science Conference, which was born out of the development of the CTSAs. And so we have a long history with that world. But I think there's a large group of the InterReach community that does not identify themselves as necessarily in the translational team science realm. And so my question was a little bit more for those that don't really identify as part of a translational team science realm, is there value and is there relevance for the development of potentially a sister digital badge or some other kind of credentialing that might be helpful in kind of, as I think it was Nicole had mentioned, in sort of the developing the credibility of the work that we're already doing. So I wanted to pose that question. Do you guys see value and relevance for the work that you do if you're not in part of a translational team?
I just put this in the chat, but I come from I have translational teams in the ecosystem in which I work at Ohio State. But I also have a lot of teams focused outside of medicine, and the clinical and translational world is not there. That's not the vocabulary. So I made a note that perhaps translational in the medical term, because my institute's actually called the Translational Data Analytics Institute, but what we mean is taking basic science to market, or whatever that second noun is. So it could be benchside or bedside, or it could be, commercialization. But it could be, there are kind of aspects, teasing out what are the aspects that make kind of the clinical translational realm, what are the special challenges and activities that those teams are focused on versus other types of teams. So interdisciplinary teams, that's kind of another way to kind of slice and dice, because a translational medical team might not be interdisciplinary, and an interdisciplinary may not be translational, or they could be both. So kind of a way to, and this has been my focus lately, how do you design something that has like flexibility built in so that you can kind of ramp up one dimension or another? So, totally easy, but that was a note I had. So it could be like a specialty or, like a sub-track or whatever, interdisciplinary, translational, international could be another, whatever. So, but I love this. What you've laid out is wonderful. So thank you for that.
This is such helpful discussion, and I'm seeing the things in chat that are encouraging us not to be too, particular about translational. And as I'm thinking about it, the first 2 levels of the digital badges don't have to be particular to translational, right? The team science fundamentals could be take a few different modules from teamscience.net, and you can pick and choose the ones that are relevant to you, right? So I think we could think about a model where the first 2 levels aren't focused and exclusive and more inclusive. And then the 3rd and 4th could be more particular to our population. I'm open. I like that idea.
Well, and one of your open questions too was like, what are the other courses that we're missing? TeamScience.net is one example of a course that someone could take.
Mm-hmm.
Are there others that, and I encourage folks to email either me or Patrick, if you know of other courses that would help to sort of lay the foundation for this team science, collaborative, professional, arrow, integrative, scholarly person. If you can think of other examples of trainings that these people might be willing or might be able to take, please let us know. Mm-hmm. Okay. Lastly, I know we're right at time, but I just want to say we are cooking up something really exciting for the 2024 to 2025 InterReach academic year series. And so stay tuned in your email inbox for more information on that. And thank you so much, Patrick, for all of this great work and for sharing your work with us. It sounds like there's a lot of excitement around it.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Really appreciate it. Again, I know that you're volunteering your time. Everyone's super busy. This is great to get such great feedback, and wonderful to see so many friendly faces and meet new faces.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone.